I suck at jiu-jitsu. How do I suck less at jiu-jitsu?
I guess to suck less.
Ladies and gentlemen, the diabolical leader of the Head Knock Squad.
Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to the newest episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So today we have, actually, if you're watching on video, a little bit different of a look, mainly for my convenience sake, to be honest. Honestly, probably doesn't look as good, but requires less setup. So a little bit different of a look of this solo episodes. We'll get it dialed in, get it perfect soon enough. But today we are coming off of a really cool interview with Henry Akins. For me, coming off of, as always, a lot of travel and a lot of jiu-jitsu stuff. And so we'll kind of talk through some of that. But I named today's episode, I repeated a name, right? We made a 2.0 version of an episode, and it is the best jiu-jitsu advice that I have ever gotten. And we're going to look at what we talked about years ago from that advice I got from Sean Williams when I was a purple belt. I've done a whole episode on this before. It's definitely worth the listen. I really still consider it the best jiu-jitsu advice that I have ever gotten. And yes, today's episode is about that. That is the story that I'm going to tell you. And that's probably the part of it you're going to remember. But the lesson is a little bit different. The lesson to me today is that in jiu-jitsu, it is so common for us to act like we are always right. And I don't think that we always are. And I want to kind of show you guys what that means by defining what right is in jiu-jitsu. It's just so easy to think of, if my coach showed me a way to do this, or if a black belt or if a higher belt showed me a way to do this, that it is the only way. And so I will go through my jiu-jitsu career. A lot of us for years will go through our jiu-jitsu career with these things that we learned at white and blue belt that don't actually work. Or don't work in the context that we think that they do, but we are so sure of it, we don't believe it. We don't buy in, right? And we say, no, this works. Somebody really sharp told me this, and maybe somebody sharp did tell you this, but they can be wrong too. And that's really the lesson is at the front of this episode too, I guess. But that is the lesson of today's episode, and I think it will make a lot of sense once we get into today's episode. Don't forget, we are still rocking and rolling with the sales of efficient BJJ strength in 15 minutes. This is a once to twice a week workout program that Steve McKinney, with 35 years of fitness industry experience and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and a professional high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu son who he's trained for 15 years, actually longer than that. But really, there's a lot of great information on this. We're getting a lot of people that are excited about the workouts, even already in the first 3 weeks, starting to get some people sending some small results. And it's, when you have that means they've done 3 workouts, and, to get results from 3 workouts is pretty nuts. And be sure to check that out. I'll make sure to have the commercial to give you guys a little bit more information about that, and give you some information on how you could get my dad's 2 instructionals before this one for half off. And so that's all I have for you guys. Let's go ahead and get into today's episode. All right, let's get started with, if you are competing today or this weekend, good luck to you at Master Worlds. If you are a listener of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show and you are competing, good luck to you, unless you're fighting one of my guys. And then bad luck to you. Luckily, everything I've ever told you on the show is a lie. It isn't true. But if you're not fighting one of my guys, good luck. I really hope the stuff that we do talk about on the show is helpful. And I'll make sure to keep today's episode not competitive at all. We're not really going to talk about competition at all. And so if you are wanting to listen to today's episode to get your mind off competing over this week, do it. We were not going to be really getting into that. But last little thing, I will be at Master World's Jiu-Jitsu Con the entire week, be staying in the hotel connected to it, and I will be around the entire week. And so will executive producer Bryce Allen. He'll be vlogging the whole week for us too. And yeah, if you see me, come say hi. There are people, like I tell you guys, there are people that are relevant at these tournaments, and you come say hi and they like brush you off. They're like, oh my gosh, leave me alone. I don't everybody wants to hang out with me, right? But when you walk up to Josh and you go, hey, I listened to the show, me and my entire team are going to cheer. We're going to be like, we found one. Hooray. One of the 7 people that listen to the show, And so, definitely come say hi and, challenge me to a fight to the death. That's what I'm there for. But let's go ahead and get into today's episode. I think a fun place to start on today's episode is I'm going to tell you guys about a seminar. The story is 2 seminars, and we will get into that, but the story is also jiu-jitsu journey for me too. And so when I want to say the year is probably 2018. I have had a jiu-jitsu school for less than a year, but in that time, no doubt to me, I wasn't getting as good. I was noticeably not getting as good as I had been when we had we had our own space to train before I started my school. And it was me, my dad, a few other guys still trained to this day. But we had the jiu-jitsu garage. And in those days, we got to just focus on our competitive training. There were no new people, there was no need to adjust how hard we were going. We would just train hard and we would compete. And so for me, that was how I got better, the standard jiu-jitsu approach. And there were, of course, my coach was a very big positional sparring person, still something I do to this day with all my guys. Every week we do positional sparring. And, that was also a way I was brought up. But the main way I was brought up was you've got to train hard if you're going to be a competitor, and you've got to do a lot of live rounds, and did that constantly. We would do our live rounds. We would do our hard training all the time and go compete. Then when it was time to start to be a coach, and you started jiu-jitsu school, you're not making any money. I was a full-time personal trainer. I would start almost every day at like 5 or 5:30. That would be like my first clients. And then my day would go on with 2 jiu-jitsu training sessions for me. I would teach a teen class and an adult class, and then probably get home at 8:30ish and wake up the next morning and do it again. And that was pretty much what I did to get closer to all the things that I wanted to get closer to. Well, here's the problem. When I'm doing those night classes, I was noticing that I was not getting better, that I almost was having to roll in ways that I was creating some bad habits. And also the other funny thing that I was noticing is these guys that were coming in off the streets, and I'm a purple belt at the time, and I'm very good. I'm a very good competitor. And these guys that are coming in to try class, they're like harder for me to sweep than most guys that have been training for a while. And they're like harder for me to deal with. And I couldn't really put my finger on why. And then I went to a seminar one day, and you go to like Sean Williams' seminar. That's who taught this seminar. And something that Sean does that I feel like I try to do at my seminars now is he will give general advice throughout the seminar. And so maybe he will show you a technique or an idea, and then he'll say, and if you want to get good at this, work it this way. And then he'll say, if you want to get good, at anything, you probably should work it this way. And he'll explain that the training method behind it. Right. And so you leave with so much more than just a couple of moves. And when he would do this, I just remember like going to his seminars and loving him. And one of the times he came and he told a story, and I've heard him tell this story multiple times. He's told it on our show. I think that still to this day, that is one of the most listened to episodes, interviews of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. And so I asked him about that. He explained that when Roger Gracie was getting ready for the world championships, that he the years that he went back to back and won double gold, and I think all but one match was won by submission, and it was for 2 years he did that, which is just unbelievable. But what was even crazier was he wasn't on a jiu-jitsu super team at the time, and everybody else that he was beating was. He was training. I think the highest belt that he had to train with was a purple belt, and it was like 180 pounds. And so this dude's training with 180-pound purple belts, and competing against the biggest, strongest, best black belts in the world and beating them all by submission. And so when asked about it, his answer was, I learned to roll without strength. And Sean Williams told this story. And like that was so interesting to me. Roll without strength. And Sean gave a little more context. He's like, because if you can do your technique without any strength and you are truly efficient, you're using your weight, you're using your timing, you're using your frames, you're using the things that we talk about in jiu-jitsu that are not strength, athleticism, speed, even flexibility, not using those physical attributes, taking those physical attributes out of your jiu-jitsu so you can do jiu-jitsu efficiently. Why would you do that though? Few reasons. One day you're not going to have those physical attributes. One day your flexibility will diminish, your strength will diminish, your speed will diminish, your cardio will diminish. And if you're trying to stay on the mats, if you needed those things to win and to be on the mat, that's not going to be good for you. You're going to really struggle. But if you didn't need those things, if those things, that strength, that speed, if it was okay, your jiu-jitsu worked without it, it's not going to be a huge deal. That's one answer. But the reason that Roger did it was not that. The reason that Roger did it was now, if you add your strength, speed, athleticism, flexibility back to truly efficient and truly perfect jiu-jitsu, right? You add the strength that you're using, you multiply it by 5. You were using 20% strength, and now when you're using 100, and it's unbelievable, right? It's huge. It's this big thing because you now have your strength in the right spots, and it's totally efficient, and you feel 100 times stronger to the person that you're going with. And so that for me shook my understanding of jiu-jitsu as a young 20-year-old, 19-year-old, probably, when I was told this information. What year did I say that? I think I threw out a wrong year. I think this might have been 2015. So then I would have been, how old am I now? 21, 20 or 21. That would have been age-wise. But to me, a young athlete trying to be an adult competitor, don't use strength, don't use speed. That's interesting. I want to try that. And I started to. And what was interesting is I started to realize why I was struggling with those brand new guys. It was because I was using too much athleticism in my jiu-jitsu. Strength and speed was too tied into my jiu-jitsu. And here is the problem with that. Those guys come in with zero jiu-jitsu knowledge, right? But they also come in with strength and speed. And so if my logic is, okay, I'm going to use my jiu-jitsu, but I also have to use my strength and speed to get my jiu-jitsu to work. Well, what if they can match those things? What if they have more strength and more speed than I have? What if they have more cardio? Well, of course I have technique. I should win, but you'll notice you get tired playing jiu-jitsu this way. You can't play jiu-jitsu for hours this way. And when I started to notice that, and I started to remove that strength and speed, I started to notice, man, these brand new guys that come off the streets, I'm beating them so effortlessly. It's at 0%, right? And I experiment with this idea, right? And it's not at 0%, it's at 20%. This is how I would explain what rolling without strength felt like to me. It's 20% intensity all the time, and then 60% when I need it, right? Of course, you have 100 if you ever need it. But to me, that was the balance between the two things. That was what I was trying to hit. 100%. How much could you actually go? How long could you actually go 100% for? Probably not much. I know I can't. So for me, like 60%, I could still hold, I can maintain for a very long time if I need to. And so it's kind of this idea of efficiency, but my jiu-jitsu technique, it started to get better. And then what was even crazier about it is I started to do it to more than just white belts, more than just 6 month and under guys. I started to do it to like some blue belts, and then some purple belts, and then most blue belts, and then most purple belts. And honestly, there was, by the time I got to brown belt, if you can flow grappling me, you can watch a lot of my matches and you can see he's not using a ton of strength. He's not using a ton of athleticism. And I actually had felt a few times, because I would train this way. To me, this was only a training method. This was only a way to think about training jiu-jitsu. Just use less strength, use less speed. You can train twice a day now, Josh, because you're not using a lot of effort and a lot of physicality. And so for me, in this time, as I start to get to brown belt, I got to, brown belt adult, you get to fight some legitimate black belts that obviously they aren't black belts yet. But in tournaments, there are guys, that I'm fighting that I don't know this yet, but are going to win and place at Worlds the following year at black belt. And so it's like you're fighting at a high level, but getting to fight some of those guys and getting that little prequel before black belt, you get to go, oh, they feel a little bit different. And some guys were feeling more effortless. They were feeling more smooth with their jiu-jitsu, and they were the hardest people to deal with. And so I was like, what if I tried this competitively? And I specifically remember the first tournament that I tried it on. But I remember it was something smaller, and I was by myself. I was like, well, if I lose, who cares? My team's not here. None of my guys are here. I'm just going to grapple. Right. And we always talk about how now I realize that I do better as a competitor that way, just going out to grapple and not getting too obsessed with stuff. But I went out at like 20% on this guy. It was a pretty tough guy. I was like, well, if I need to just turn it up, then I'll just turn it up. But again, I can experiment here. And I remember going and I beat him. And I was like, okay, that's pretty nuts. It was like a 4-man division. So I have one more match. And I beat him, and I literally never got out of 20% intensity. It was bizarre. And I'm like, okay, it was one step at a time. Like, that was really cool. If I could, it's like, it was the scene in Happy Gilmore where he scores his first hole in one, and he looks at his coach and he goes, if I could just get the ball in the hole in the first try every time, I wouldn't have to worry about that putting stuff. And his coach is like, yeah, that's a good plan, And for me, it was, if I could beat all these guys with 20%, I'll just do that every time. And it changed brown belt for me. This was probably, I ended up fighting that next match, same thing, effortless. Called my dad right after. And I'm like, Dad, I've been training, like really, really smooth, really flowy, not using strength, trying to just play differently. And he's like, yeah, the Hodger thing. Like, yeah. Well, I competed like that today. Both matches, I competed at that intensity. He's like, really? Like, yeah, I won. I dominated. And it was this struggle of like, but they were going 100%. And so I started to learn it a little deeper. I started to go, oh, this is just pacing. This is understanding how to keep advancing without having to have your foot all the way down on the gas. And most people just don't know how to do this. They only know offense. Only hit this pass, hit this pass, hit this pass. And it's like, bro, that pass ain't working, and you're getting more and more tired. And I'm using 20%. I'm only using frames. I am only building frames, and you're not going to pass me here. And you're using 80%. And even if you have better cardio, I will take the 20% versus 80% trade-off, 20% versus 100% trade-off every time, even if it means getting scored an advantage on for me now, right? I almost went to competition. I'm sorry, guys. I told you no competition discussion in this episode. It's just always on my mind. I'm about to go to Master Worlds and hang out with you guys, yell at you guys. I'm not even competing. I'm just there to watch you. But what's up, guys? Josh McKinney here, sitting down with my dad, Steve, and we are just talking about something exciting. We run simplifyingjiujitsu.com together, and we have really the biggest product we've ever put together, the most work we've ever put into a product. And it is called Efficient BJJ Strength in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I wanted to call it Train Muscles and Save Joints, but I like yours better.
I think that is one of the biggest benefits, is the fact that you do save your joints and you don't hurt your muscles. But I think one of the biggest selling points is that it's 15 minutes a week, maybe twice a week.
But you get stronger. And that is the number one idea behind what we do. And then what we do is we put things in a simplified, logical, common sense order, so that you can kind of see how to enhance your training and keep yourself from hurting yourself outside of the gym, because jiu-jitsu is hard enough on your body.
There is so much injury risk in jiu-jitsu. Why in the heck would we have injury risk in our training?
Absolutely.
And so to me, right now, it makes a lot of sense already. But if someone were to purchase it in this month, what's really exciting is we have this thing going called Steve's Bundle. We're also going to throw in, for half off, how to train jiu-jitsu and 60, train until 60 and beyond, 60 moves that work into your 60s.
Wait. Say that again, Josh. What do they get?
But wait, there's more. If you, for 50% off, you can get How to Train Jiu-Jitsu, which is a Steve and Josh McKinney product, and 60 moves that work when you're 60, which I was watching back recently. We have a long-haired Bryce Allen getting neon bellied. That was when I made the post about him dying and us reviving him, and his mom was calling. She actually thought we killed him. Yeah. Oof. Great thing, but great product too.
Yes, it'll be helpful. It really does help people, and it'll allow them to think differently. It is different than anything that anyone has out there.
And so the only way to get it is to go to simplifyingjujitsu.com. You can go to simplifyingjujitsu.com/15. That will take you to a page that gives you a little more information, gives you some thumbnail, or gives you some interviews with different athletes that have benefited, and just a lot more information on the product itself. And you guys can check that out at simplifyingjujitsu.com. I guess that's the end of that idea. Let's move on. Let's say, that's kind of where I was at mindset wise with this thought of roll without strength. And I carried it into black belt. And at black belt, skill wise, I didn't seem to be able to do it with guys. There were guys that would do it to me, but skill wise, I just didn't seem to be able to do it. I kept working it, and eventually I started to, feel all right with it or whatever. Now we fast forward to 2 weekends ago, and we talked about this on the episode this Tuesday. I highly recommend the episode that just came out. I highly recommend the Henry Akins episode if you guys have not heard it yet. But we talk about this, at this seminar that I go to of Henry Akins. He talks about rolling without strength, and he shows some examples. I understand roll without strength. Sean Williams told me that idea. It has changed my jiu-jitsu. I have podcast episodes about the idea. Well, I'm doing one of the moves he shows, and I say, Henry, I'm having trouble here. I'm doing it on my dad. I'm like, I can't seem to apply the pressure that you're applying here, or that some of the other guys. He's like, well, let me feel it, Josh. So I let him feel it. He's like, you're tense, man. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm giving you no energy on this. He's like, you're so tense right now. He's like, loosen up. It's like, you're muscling this. I was like, I didn't feel like I was muscling it. And then, we adjust. He's like, holy cow, I feel like I'm putting pressure on you now. He's like, yeah, I feel that too. Okay, that was weird. And there were a few other times he tweaked different things that I was doing. And the answer again, it was that I was muscling. I have an episode about roll without strength. It's all I do. Everybody that rolls with me goes, oh, that was the gentlest beating I've ever gotten. I'm muscling. And it honestly, it kind of messed up my thought process for a day. We're on vacation. We're in Florida when we're at the seminar. So like me and my wife are hanging out on the beach and I'm just like staring off into space. Too tense. I'm using too much energy when I'm drilling, when I'm trying to practice this move at what I thought was 0%. And I'm looking off into space. Did this guy just feel this huge thing that I don't understand in something that I thought I understood? And so the next day we show up and he says, yeah, we're going to do Q&A today. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so glad I've been wanting to ask a question. And I ask him about it and I get more context and he tells me more. Then he lets me feel some things and then we talk more. And by the end of it, I'm going, I didn't understand roll without strength. I was starting to understand, but I didn't understand. How crazy. Still, you can hear it. I still am just shook by this. This dude was explaining certain things that I felt and I could feel them enough. And I understand the rest of jiu-jitsu enough that I can go, I'm pretty sure what he's saying is true. But I also can acknowledge, I can also tell when he explains it, I couldn't explain it back to him differently. I don't understand. I can repeat what he's saying to me, but I do not understand what he means. And to somebody who that's all they focus on in jiu-jitsu, and a lot of the time when I learn from people, I enjoy it, I learn, but I understand. And this guy shows me something that I thought I understood. That people say, wow, Josh, you really understand that. That really helped me, what you said about it. Roll without, learn to roll without strength. And he explained it in ways that it not ruined jiu-jitsu for me. It ruined jiu-jitsu in a great way. It showed me the same lesson I've learned a million times. And the lesson of this episode, which is you can be right and not be completely right in the jiu-jitsu world. And there may not actually be completely right. There may not actually be perfect technique. There may not actually be the perfect way to say it because there's all these variabilities and everybody learns differently, right? And so I've always said this. I've said this since I was a purple belt. My students will ask me a question and they'll be like, man, how do you always have the right answer when I ask you a question? And I remember getting that as a purple belt and I would just be like, oh, it's probably because I'm good. And then I started to realize like, oh, I'm just sharing my perspective. This is how I see knee cuts right now. And I've always said, if you ask me in 5 years, my answer will be different. But does that mean that the original answer was wrong? Oh, it was stupid? No, it doesn't mean that. It was the best answer that I had at the time. That is how we understand deeper. We don't get too married to one idea or another and say, this is the way. I'm sure if I listened through the first 30 episodes of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, I am sure that I said things that I don't completely agree with now. Or I say, I think of these differently now. Does that mean I shouldn't have done a podcast then? Does that mean I should have, you didn't know them perfectly? Because I know I'm going to know 5 years from now, 3 years from now. Why would I expect anything to be different? Why would I expect, with my progression going the same way, with me finding new coaches to learn from, Why would I expect anything different? Why would I expect to not be way smarter in 3 years? I should expect that, right? I've developed some ways, some ideas, some habits, some systems to continue to progress. Why wouldn't I expect to keep progressing? And if I keep progressing, shouldn't I just progress as a coach? Shouldn't I be smarter? Shouldn't I have a better understanding? And so, again, the big takeaway is you have to understand that in jiu-jitsu, there are not absolutes. You see people come out with a new way to, I mean, a perfect example, come out with a new training method, right? You come out with this idea of designated winner, a method to train, and it is very simply defined, and it's a thing that very high level people have done for a very long time, but nobody really defines it. And just putting a name behind it has really helped a lot of people in a lot of different teams, right? And so there are two ways that we can look at this. One, people go, oh, Josh invented designated winner. No, he didn't. Josh saw other people do it and he defined it. He just said, hey, here's a good definition. Here's a good term to use, right? And then eventually he'll monetize it. So don't forget about that. But like, you observe this kind of idea and you go, okay, well, this gym does it this way, this gym does it this way, this gym does it this way. This is how we can explain it that kind of encompasses all those things, right? But again, same seminar. I learned things about how to structure designated winner classes that I never would have known. And it was, again, that knowledge was out there. Was it my knowledge? No. And so people will do this thing, though, where they will come out with this new guard or this new, just something that gains you some respect because it's useful, it's helpful, it's cool, it's whatever, right? But people will come out with these things. And then they will act like that makes them 100% right about everything else. And to me, those guys, to quote my friend Jake Luigi, those guys will always get left behind. Always. Eventually, those guys will be left behind. You want proof? I can name for you guys a bunch of people who were really relevant when I was coming up, coaches, teams that are no longer relevant. And to me, it's because they got married to certain ideas. They said, this is our identity. We cannot get away from this type of training, even though we don't necessarily even agree anymore that it's the best thing for us. Right? Because like how I used to train at Head Nod, originally at our first gym 8 years ago, it worked, but it was just too hard. It was just too physical. And we had to kind of start to go down from there. It's still excessively physical. But it's less than it was then, right? And you almost needed that group to learn, okay, there is a limit, and you have to, when you're looking at long game, you have to approach it a little bit differently, right? And so, that is the main thing that this whole episode was about, just understanding that you can be wrong, you can be right, and you can be more right in jiu-jitsu. But when you start to hear people deal in such absolutes, you should never train this way. You should never do this. Maybe those people are just smarter than me and I just didn't know that yet, right? Maybe they're right. But I think a lot of times we get in these ideas because we start to understand something in jiu-jitsu and then we go, yeah, I get that now. I had a cool question yesterday. I was teaching chest over chest and it's ideas on guard passing to never get swept or submitted from the guard, right? 2 distances to never get swept or submitted from the guard. And showing it to pass. In one question I got from one of the black belts that was there, he's like, yeah, I teach like controlling across the body with those. I always talk about the 4 main joints, both shoulders, both hips. He's like, I teach to pin somebody you control across. And I go, yeah. And I showed a few thoughts on that. Like, so maybe a position like this, a position like this. And he's like, yeah, I showed those things. He's like, how does chest over chest apply? And I go, oh, that's really interesting. So I'm at Devin Prada's gym. I'm a Prada Jiu-Jitsu, and 2 TAC team Kansas City schools, him and Body Fit Kansas City. And the last time I was at Body Fit, I think it was in 2019. They were both coaches were still at the same gym. So they were packed tight in there, and I taught guard passing. And so at that point, this black belt says this to me, like, yeah, you control the shoulders and the hips. And I go, hey, does anybody remember the concept that I told you guys about the very last time I was here? It was when I was here 3-4 years ago. And somebody goes, diagonal control. Yeah. And how did I define diagonal control? You're controlling the hip, you're controlling the shoulder, you're controlling the shoulder, you're controlling the hip. You're never controlling both big joints on the same side. Allows people to be able to roll one way, right? But you control across the body and it keeps them flat. And so, it was just cool because I'm like, yeah, that was the precursor to chest over chest. And if you look at that, if you think about that, that is a very simple way to explain guard passing and explain pinning people. It is a really good way to define it, I think. But does that mean it's the best way to explain it? Does that mean there's no room for innovation? To me, there is always room for innovation in the jiu-jitsu space, at least from what I've seen. And so that's where I'll leave you guys with today's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, I'll give you one more recommendation. If you have not checked out the Henry Akins interview, check out the Henry Akins interview. But that's all I have for you guys. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And I keep wanting to skip my intro. Let's turn it over to Josh for the outro. Let's turn it over to Josh for the outro, because I do have a few things to mention to you guys. And that is the episode. Thank you guys for listening to this one. Like I said, if you see me at Master Worlds, be sure to come say hi. Jiu-Jitsu Con, Master Worlds, they're the same thing. Be sure to come say hi, challenge me to a fight to the death, all that stuff. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I really think that if you are interested in what we've been starting to put out, we're starting to put out instructionals again on simplifyingjiujitsu.com. I'm hoping every 2 months we'll have one for right now. Have a new one for right now. I have the next couple planned and almost finished. And so, or one of them almost finished. And so, yeah, we'll get into that in the future. But the best way to know about that stuff, and if you like a lot of these ideas that we talk about on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, you will like the ebook, The 3 Lenses. It is totally free. It is only available at simplifyingjujitsu.com/3. And it will explain to you how you best learn jiu-jitsu, you as an individual. And it'll give you some ideas on how other people learn jiu-jitsu too. And that is why there aren't these perfect sentences that will teach everybody the move perfectly, right? It's why you have to kind of know the audience, because different people learn differently. And that's what the book really explains. And if you sign up for it, it will put you on our email list, the Gi Gazette. And that is the best way to know about anything new that we have going on at simplifyingjujitsu.com. We've been doing vlogs. We've been doing all kinds of different short form content, and really starting to turn up the speed of the content creation. And so, yeah, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I hope that today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day.